But if Russia wins in Ukraine, if we let it happen through inaction or internal distraction, the Baltics are next. The question Estonia and NATO is going to ask Washington is simple. Are you with us? Washington may not have a clear answer. It is the signal we send when we dismantle our own intelligence capabilities in the middle of the most dangerous period in European security since 1939. The question is not whether we can afford to care about Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. The question is whether we can afford the world we get if we do not. Picture this. It's 2 a.m. in Tallinn, Estonia. Tallinn is a city of 450,000 people, 40 miles from the Russian border. The Estonian defense minister is on the phone with NATO headquarters. Russian forces are massing on his border. The question Estonia and NATO is going to ask Washington is simple. Are you with us? And here's what keeps me up at night. Right now, 2026, Washington may not have a clear answer, not because Americans do not care, but because we have spent the last year dismantling the very intelligence infrastructure designed to see this threat coming. Here is the number that matters. In August 2025, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence cut his staff by 50% and slashed its budget by $700 million. The FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force, a unit specifically designed to track Russian movements in Europe, was disbanded. The analysts who spent careers reading Russian military signals were shown the door, and Putin is watching every bit of it. And does this make any sense to you? This is not just a foreign policy story. It is an American security story. And today I'm going to show you why Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are our problem, and why both sides of this debate have legitimate points, and what common sense tells us we must do before we lose the ability to act at all. Welcome, Patriots, to this edition of Common Sense for America. I'm Bruce Rutherford, your host and commentator, coming to you from the beautiful Westwood Golf Club in Houston, Texas. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Now let's dive in. Let me give you the case for staying out, because it's a serious case and it deserves respect. America is $39 trillion in debt. We just spent 2 decades and $2.3 trillion in Afghanistan and Iraq. We have real problems at home, a border that still needs securing, an infrastructure that needs rebuilding, a middle class that needs relief. The argument goes like this. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are NATO countries. Europe's combined gross domestic product is $23 trillion. Europe is more than capable of defending its own frontier. Why should American taxpayers carry that burden? Underneath that argument is a deeper one. The expansion of NATO eastward after the Cold War was a provocation. Russia was promised informally that NATO would not expand to the east. Now, we expanded anyway, and is it any wonder how Putin has reacted as he has? I'm not agreeing with that argument, but it is a thoughtful argument made by serious people. And here's the thing. The concern about American overextension is legitimate. Now, here's the other side of the argument. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are not abstract dots on a map. They are 3 successful, rich democracies. They're small, free, and they're terrified. They were swallowed by the Soviet Union in 1940 and spent 51 years under communist occupation. They regained their freedom in 1991, and they joined NATO in 2004, specifically because they know what Russian occupation looks like from bitter experience. Their defense spending as a percentage of gross domestic product now exceeds America's. Estonia spends 3.4% of GDP on defense. Latvia, 3.2%. Lithuania, 4%. These are not free riders. These are nations that watched what happened in the Ukraine and said, Never again. And here's the thing. Putin himself has said publicly that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. He wants those countries back. This is not a theory, that's a quote. But here's the real problem. It's not Europe versus America on defense spending. It is the signal we send when we dismantle our own intelligence capabilities in the middle of the most dangerous period in European security since 1939. In March 2025, the Signalgate leak exposed a deep fracture inside the Trump National Security Council. Hawks were pushing for decisive action against adversaries on one side, and doves were arguing for American restraint on the other side. Now that internal war cost us Mike Waltz, who was moved from National Security Advisor to UN Ambassador. It cost us senior Russian analysts across the CIA, and it left a policy vacuum that Putin reads as clearly as a military map. Let me tell you what I told my colleague recently. If Russia is defeated in Ukraine, truly defeated, the domino effect is extraordinary. Putin is weakened inside Russia. He could be deposed. Russia, as China's strategic partner, becomes dramatically less reliable. North Korea loses its patron. Iran, already on the ropes, loses its primary weapons supplier. Two of the four nations most hostile to American interests are neutralized. That is not optimism. That is strategic logic. But if Russia wins in Ukraine, if we let it happen through inaction or internal distraction, the Baltics are next. Not maybe, not eventually, they're next. Because every aggressor in history has read weakness the same way. They attack weakness. Now, George Washington warned us in his farewell address to steer clear permanent alliances. Now, he was right in 1796 for 1796. But Washington also built the Continental Army because he understood that freedom does not defend itself. He understood that weakness invites attack. Here's what common sense tells us. We do not need to send American troops to Estonia. We do not need to occupy anyone. What we need to do is three things. First, rebuild the intelligence infrastructure we just dismantled. Cannot defend what you cannot see. Cutting the analysts who track Russian military movement is like removing the smoke detectors from your house to save money on batteries. I mean, it makes no sense. Second, hold NATO to its commitments. That is every member above 2% of GDP in defense spending. That strengthens the alliance and reduces Americans' burden. Now, most are now meeting that threshold. In 2024, 23 of 32 NATO members hit the target. Now, that is real. Third, finish the job in Ukraine. Because, as I said to my colleague recently, if we're in it, we have to win it. Russian defeat in the Ukraine is the single most cost-effective thing America can do for Baltic security, for Asian security, and for our own security. The question is not whether we can afford to care about Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. The question is whether we can afford the world we get if we do not care, if we do nothing. Now, here's what you need to remember. The Baltics are not asking us to fight their war. They are asking us to keep the promise we made when we invited them into NATO. Breaking that promise does not make America stronger. It makes every alliance that we have worthless. And in a world with China watching Taiwan, that is a cost we cannot afford. Now, this matters because the decisions being made in Washington right now about the intelligence funding, about NATO commitments, about Ukraine will determine whether your grandchildren live in a world where democracies survive and thrive, or one where aggressors have learned that NATO means nothing. Talk about this with your family. Tell me in the comments section, do you think the Baltics are our fight? Should we stand with them or abandon them? Next time, we examine the departures from Trump's inner circle. Tulsi Gabbard, Pam Bondi, Mike Waltz. That pattern tells us about governing in the most hostile political environment in modern American history. Till then, may God bless you and yours, and God bless America.